Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video, I'm bringing to you 50 plus romance book recommendations. These are probably the best of all the romance books that I've read in the past 5 to 7 years. You will find some very popular ones here, at the same time not so popular ones also, which are very much underrated in my opinion. The categories in which I'm going to recommend books to you guys today are young love, adult romance, fun and entertaining romances, queer love stories, and romance series. Apart from these 5 categories, I also have another bonus which I'll be revealing towards the end of the video. Trust me, that bonus is worth it because if you stay until the end of the video, you'll get to know what that bonus is, and it'll also help you make your life better, not just in the romantic aspect but also wholly. So without any further ado, let's get into the books right away. The first category in which I'm going to recommend the books to you guys are young romances. So these books can be read by anyone who's 14 or 15 and above in age because they are really sweet, nice stories, and some of them are also kind of sad. But as a whole, they are okay for this age range because anyone who's 14 and above, they are in between that age of childhood and adulthood, right? So these books would be very perfect for them in terms of romance. The first one is a favorite of mine from last year, and it is When Love Came Calling by Preeti Shenoy. Now, this is an Indian new adult romance book. Both the main characters whom we see here are new adults. That is, one is in his early 20s and the other is 19 years old. Here we follow Pooja and Arush and how their love story starts from a volunteer program that they do in Wayanad. The thing about them is that Pooja is from Kerala in India and Arush's family has settled in the UK. After falling in love, they have to separate, and how this is going to work out for them in terms of a long distance relationship is beautifully explored here. This is easily the sweetest book that I read in 2024. Next, we have a YA romance, which is I Love You So Mochi by Sarah Kuhn. In this book, we follow our main character Kimi, who's in the final year of her high school, and she wants to take up fashion as a profession in the future and she wants to study for that, but her mother does not accept to it. During this time, Kimi also gets this opportunity to go and visit her grandparents in Japan. She goes there, stays with them, and there's a small romance that happens there between her and this other guy named Kira. This book happens during the cherry blossom season in Japan, and it is just such a beautiful backdrop for the story. It's not just a romance, but also a very good coming of age story, which will resonate with a lot of readers. Next, we have a YA romance short story collection, and it is Summer Days and Summer Nights, put together by Stephanie Perkins. There are a total of 12 summer romance stories inside this one, and it is really perfect to read during the summer season. I'm sure that by mid-February itself, we'll start having a lot of sunlight, and I think this will be a book that will be perfect to read during this season. Some of the authors who have their short stories in this one are Dee Bardugo, Cassandra Clare, and Libba Bray. It is not just easy to read, but also super fun. Next, we have 3 books which are sadder in their tone compared to the previous 3 books. And of these, the saddest of all is You've Reached Sam by Dustin Thau. Here we follow this couple Julie and Sam, of whom Sam has already died in the beginning of the story. What Julie does is she makes Sam one last call in order to hear his voice from his voice message. But instead of that, what ends up happening is Sam picks up the phone and talks to her. He's actually dead, and we can consider his ghost talking to Julie here. Julie going through the entire grieving process of losing Sam is the plot of this book. It is quite short but also super emotional. So if you want to read a teenage romance which is super sad in its tone, you can definitely go forward and read this. But just keep in mind that the grief that is experienced by the main character here will be very strong, and it will affect the reader in some way or the other. The next 2 books that we see here are by one author, of which the first one is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. In this, we follow the love story between Natasha and Daniel, who end up meeting for just one day. Okay, so the entire book takes place within 24 hours time span, and both of them are dealing with a very bad phase of their life right now, and in particular the day in which the story takes place is so much bad. How out of nowhere their lives just coincide and the beautiful romance looms between them is the plot of this book. Since the entire story takes place in just a single day, you can easily finish reading this book in just one sitting. It might look big, but it is very easy to read through. At the same time, this will be very emotional because both of the main characters whom we see here are dealing with things that most teenagers who are in the final year of school and getting into college are dealing with. No matter who reads this book, I'm sure that the emotions that are experienced by the characters here will be latching onto our hearts very well. The next book by the author is Everything Everything. Now in this we follow Maddie and Ollie. Now Maddie is the main character of this book, and she is having this kind of medical condition because of which she cannot make contact with anyone or anything outside the world. So her mother is taking good care of her by just keeping her inside her room alone, and because of this Maddie reads a lot of books. During this time, in her neighbor's house comes this guy named Ollie, and both of them start talking with each other and also chatting with each other. There is no physical contact in this book, and the extent to which the author has made the romance beautiful beautiful, even without the characters being in physical proximity to each other. Is really well done. Again, the tone of this one will be a little sad. The last young romance book that I have to recommend to you guys today is a library romance, and it is By Your Side by Casey West, in which we see both of our main characters getting trapped in a library during a long weekend. Both of these people are studying in the same high school, but because of various reasons, they are not in each other's circles. Many conversations happen between both of them inside the library, and it's super cute to read. But after they get out of the library and get to know about each other and their family histories, the story becomes much more emotional. But if you're a bookish person, I'm definitely sure that you'll love reading this book. The next category I'm going to recommend are adult romance books. And these books are adult because they either involve adults as main characters inside the story, or they are spicy also. I'll just let you know, guys, what kind of book it is while I'm talking about each and every one of them. For me, this is the best adult romance that I've read so far because it is so mature, and it is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Here we follow our main character Emma, who was married to this guy, and he's someone who's kind of a photographer or journalist. And once he goes on a helicopter trip to an island and the helicopter crashes and he dies, she grieves his death, and after that pulls herself together and falls in love with another man, and she gets engaged to the new person now. On the day she gets engaged, she gets this phone call, and the person who's on the other side of the phone is her husband, who she assumed to be dead. They did not get his body. Somehow he has survived in an island and is now back here. After Emma gets engaged to the new person, her ex-husband comes into place. So how is Emma going to deal with this is the actual plot of this book. It is basically a love triangle, but the best love triangle that I've read so far when it comes to adults. All the three characters whom we see here are very mature, and they behave we expect adults to behave like. So if you're looking for a mature adult romance which is not spicy, then this is something which you need to try. Next we have an Indian adult romance, and this one is The Secret Wishlist by Preeti Shenoy, in which we follow our main character Deeksha, who's married to a man right now who's not that much in love with her, or basically not in love with her. They just got married for the sake of getting married because this man is very wealthy and her parents wanted to get her settled down with him. The reason this happens to Deeksha is because of an incident that happened with Deeksha and this other guy in her teen years. Now Deeksha is in her early 30s and she's questioning a lot of things in her life, during which she gets the chance to fall in love again, fall in real love again. It is such a great book, and you cannot judge the characters for what they are doing here. And infidelity is definitely a huge part of this book which you have to keep in mind. So if that irks you, this will not be for you. But the way in which the author deals with it is amazing here. I don't agree with infidelity and cheating in any way, but the way in which the author displays it here is something so different that I've not seen in any other kind of media before. So if you're interested in exploring such relationships, this will definitely be a good pick for you. Next, we have one of the sexiest books that I've read, and it is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Millers. Now, this book is not spicy sexy, but it is sexy in the vibes that it delivers to us, okay? Here we follow two of our main characters, Cleo and Frank, who have a huge age difference. Cleo is single and unmarried, and she gets married to this divorced guy named Frank. If I'm not wrong, Cleo is in her late 20s and Frank is in his early 40s. They both get attracted to each other because of various things that happen in their lives, and what happens to them after their marriage is the plot of this book. But if you ask me, this is more of an exploration of their relationship than just the romance here. The writing of the author in this one is super unique and it is gorgeous. The way in which she sets up the story is very, very beautiful. I'll just show the book cover close to you guys. You can see how aesthetic it is, right? The story is like 10x aesthetic than this cover, if you ask me. If you're someone who likes series like Lucifer and Shadowhunters on Netflix, this will definitely be a book for you. Next, we have 3 adult romances which also fall into literary fiction in a way, because all the books that this author writes fall into both of these genres, because she makes use of romance as the base layer, and under that she does a lot of literary work. And the books that I'm talking about are by Emily Henry. I've read 4 of the 5 books by the author so far, and I'm going to recommend 3 of those 4 because I did not like one. I have yet to read Funny Story and I have it with me on my shelf. I'll be reading it this year. So the first of these 3 books is Beach Read. Here we follow our 2 characters, January and Gus, who are both authors. January writes romance books and August writes literary fiction. They are both in a rut right now, and when they meet because of a vacation that they take in a particular place, they accept to exchange the books that they are writing, and January ends up writing a literary fiction book and Gus ends up writing a romance book. Apart from that, we also get to know a lot about their childhoods and their lives at large. This will be perfect to read during the summer season, but you can read it during any season if you ask me. There is so much character depth and character work. At the same time, the writing of the author is super beautiful. Following that, we have a bookish book which is Book Lovers. Here we follow the love story between an author and an editor. This is kind of a grumpy sunshine kind of combination because both of them basically do not like each other. It's not like an enemies to lovers kind of love story, but rivals to lovers kind of love story, which I liked. So basically what happens here is Nora falls in love with her editor Charlie, and he also falls in love with her but does not express it right away. There's also a lot of things that we see here going on with Nora's younger sister and her family. Again, such an entertaining book, and if you're a bookish person, there is so much bookish goodness inside this book which you will thoroughly love. And the last Emily Henry book is Happy Place, in which we follow Harriet and Win. Both of them are actually engaged together, and because of some reasons, they have broken up right now. They are part of this friend group, all of whom together go to this beach house each and every year and vacation there. Now, the fact that they have broken up after the engagement is not known to the friend group. And when they go to the vacation this year, they have to pretend like they are still engaged and not break the bubble there, because there is something going on good in the vacation house right now. There's a lot of build up there too, and we get to see the backstories of both Harriet and Win's family in this one too. Now, this is kind of a common pattern that you see in all of Emily Henry's books, right? There's a romance, but you also get to know a lot about the main characters and their families. This is definitely a summer book, so don't read it during any other season. It'll be perfect to read when the sun is bright and shining out there over a weekend. The next one is kind of a problematic book, but I like the experience of reading it because it had a lot of twists that I did not see coming, and it is also basically super traumatic. So if you don't want to read a sad story or a story that has a lot of trauma in it, don't read this, but it is also by a very popular author, which is November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I think I read this in 2022 and I finished it in just a single day itself because I was not able to put it down. It is such a page turner. Now here we follow Fallon and Ben. Both of them fall in love with each other because of various reasons, and they have a lot of issues going on in their lives. The thing about Fallon now is that she has had an accident in her past, because of which she has a lot of burn scars on her face, and she does not have a good relationship with her father, who's basically not a good person. Why she falls in love with Ben and why does Ben want to love Fallon is the actual plot of this book. It might sound a lot superficial when I'm saying like this, but when you go and read the story, trust me, you will not see that ending coming. Some people will either love this book for that or despise it to the core. So you'll have to read it if you want to know which category you will fall in. I can say that I was understanding the story, but towards the end, I did not like the climax though. Seriously, very traumatizing book. If you are going to read it, it'll be entertaining but traumatic. So do keep that in mind. And at last, in the adult romance category, we have a classic which I just read in January, and I liked the book so much. Okay, I've tried reading this 3 to 4 times before and was able to finish reading it only in 2025, and it is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. It's a classic for a reason. Okay, the author just goes forward and shows the love story between a man who's so proud of his family and just the status that he has in the society, and a woman who's super outspoken and sassy and has a lot of prejudice also. By far, this is the most dramatic book that I've read in 2025, and I should say that I really like the experience of reading this book this time. I want to reread it sometime in the future because I was able to see a lot of things that the author does here, and I also understood why it is a classic even 200 years after it's been written. So I did not understand the hype behind this book before, but Pride and Prejudice is definitely a book to at least try reading once if you like a good love story. The next category I'll be recommending for are fun and entertaining love stories. Okay, there is nothing much to these stories rather than entertainment personally for me, and that's the only thing which I loved about all of these. It's not like I love the characters, writing, or the author in any way, but the experience of reading this book will be nothing but entertaining to the core. I don't own any of these books right now, and most of these I listen to as audiobooks fully, so I'll be popping up the covers here, of which the first one is The Piano Man Project by Kat French. We follow our main character here who's working in an old age home, and for some reason the home is going to shut down right now. She's trying to do all that she can to keep the home running because it houses a lot of people who are 70 or 80 and above in age. That's not the only reason though. If the home ends up closing, she'll also lose her job. During this exact time, what happens is she gets this neighbor on her opposite apartment, and he's this very popular pianist whom she's not aware of. The thing about him is that he has gone blind right now because of an accident, and a romance blooms between the both of them. It is shown mostly like a spicy romance, but I can say that it is not that spicy. It has a lot of good content in it. So if you want to give it a try, just go forward and try it. Next, we have Geekerella by Ashley Poston, which is kind of a retelling of Cinderella's story. We have our main character here who is adopted or has a stepmother, and she wants to go and attend this convention, to which she goes and somehow meets this guy who's a huge star in a huge franchise like Star Wars inside the world of this book. It explores fandom culture as well as a very different contemporary retelling of the Cinderella story in a beautiful way. It's also YA, so if you're 14 and above, you can definitely go forward and try it. Next, we have It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I just went forward and listened to the audiobook of this one in 2023, I think, because there was a lot of hype about this author's books out in the internet, especially her romance books. And I was able to understand the hype because this book was just totally entertaining for me from the first page to the last. Here we follow this main character who's this very rich girl, and she is basically just liked by people for the money that she has. She ends up doing a huge fault, because of which her father ends up leaving her in an island that he owns, and he wants her to just make a living there. After she goes there, she tries to do a lot of stuff, fails in them, and also kind of makes her own way through. She has very low self-esteem and falls in love with this sailor who's a divorced guy, if I'm not wrong. The relationship that builds between both of them is very cute to read, and it is also kind of spicy towards the end. But as a whole, the story is super entertaining, and I want to read more of this author's books after finishing this one. So do give it a try if you haven't tested. Next, we have The Princess and the Fangirl by Ashley Poston again. Okay, this is also kind of a retelling like Geekerella, but the thing here is we have our main character who works in this food truck. And we have this other main character who's also a huge actor inside this huge franchise like Star Wars. But the thing about the actor in the franchise is that she does not want to be a part of the franchise because she does not get it. Okay, she just does the job because she's good at it and she gets paid a lot. But she has no connection with the role that she's playing or the work that she's doing for that franchise in any way. How the lives of both of these women interconnect and what all happens between them is the plot of this book. Again, if you're someone who's into fandom culture, this is definitely one book you should go forward and explore. It is YA again, so if you're 15 and above or 14 and above, you can definitely go forward and try it. Next, we have Pride by Ibiza Boy, which is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which we saw as a recommendation in the previous category. This is basically a YA retelling of Pride and Prejudice, but takes place in a very modern time. I read this book way back. I think it was 5 years back when I read this book, and I very much enjoyed the experience of reading. I had not read Pride and Prejudice back then, but I knew the plot of the story to some extent. So while I read this book, I was able to understand how it relates with the original story in some ways. I'm not going to reveal much since it's just a retelling. Go forward and try it if you're interested. It is very light in tone, super cozy, and it's also a very short book, so you can finish it just like this. For the last book inside this category, I have a very spicy book, and it is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I read this book also in 2022 only, and there was a lot of hype surrounding this book saying that it is super spicy. It is spicy to some extent, but the entirety of the book is not just dedicated for that, okay? There's a lot of description that this female main character whom we have here does about the male character here, but I cannot say that most of them are, very explicit or anything. Towards the end, it gets a bit graphic, but for most parts, the story is just super funny and entertaining. I think the main character's name here is Daniela, if I'm not wrong, and she has to go to her sister's wedding. She does not have a date, so because of some reasons, she just takes her rival from work along with her to the wedding, and they fake date kind of there, and it rolls out into this huge thing which happens between them. And when they get back to the work that they are doing, they come back as a couple. It is super funny to read, and it is also very, very entertaining. Again, a page turner, you will not be able to put it down. I think I finished reading this also in just 1 or 2 days max, even though it's a huge book. I think it's nearly 500 pages long. This book might be a hit or miss, so if you're going to try it, just keep an open mind that this is just an entertaining story and it does not have much more to offer than entertaining. Next, we have some queer love stories. I think I have a total of 6 books again for this category. All of these are standalones if I'm not wrong, so you can go forward and read them without committing to a series. I don't know why I'm saying that I have series as a separate category. So of these, the first book is Glitterland by Alexis Hall, in which we follow our main character who's an author named Ash. And he's heavily depressed right now because of various reasons. And because of that, he's not able to work or do anything as he used to. During this time, there's this other guy named Darian who comes into Ash's life, and both of them form a relationship which has a lot of ups and downs throughout. If I'm not wrong, this is the first book in a series, but you can read it as a standalone like I did. And this edition of the book also has like a short story or novella at the end of it. It is an adult romance, so keep that in mind if you're going to read it. At the same time, it's quite spicy. But the representation of mental health in this one and the kind of care that people who are depressed need and bipolar need is really beautifully showed here. So if you're looking for that kind of representation, you can definitely go forward and try this book. And if you end up liking it, you also have the rest of the series to continue with. Next, we have a cozy fantasy, which also has a beautiful romance inside it. And it is Legends and Lattes by Travis Balky, in which we follow the story of an orc named Viv, who comes forward and tries to set up a coffee shop in this very small village named Thun. There she employs a succubus as one of her employees inside the coffee shop, and a beautiful relationship forms between both of them. It is super cute to read, and the relationship that they form is also not instant anyway. It takes some time to build, and both of the characters become so shy here, which just seems very, very cute. But you can just go forward and read this book for the cozy vibes it gives itself. Next, we have one of the most popular queer romances in the past 5 to 6 years, if you ask me, and it is obviously Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I have not read any of the other books by the author so far, but this is easily one of the best romances that I've read. Here we basically follow our 2 main characters, Alex and Henry, of whom Henry is the current Prince of England and Alex is the son of the first female president of America who fall in love with each other. This is basically an enemies to lovers kind of romance, and it is beautifully done by the author here. It is an adult book, so it has some spicy scenes here and there, but as a whole, the vibes that this book gives are super beautiful. It is very rich, very well written, super funny, and a total page turner. If you end up liking the book, there is also an Amazon Prime movie adaptation of it, which is nearly just as good as the book, which very rarely happens. Next, we have another very cozy but contemporary YA romance, and it is Fake Dates and Mooncakes by Shirley. Here we follow our two characters, Dylan and Theo, of whom Dylan has this job of working in a very small shop or restaurant that is owned by his aunt. Dylan has recently lost his mother just a couple of years back, and his aunt has taken him in. He delivers a lot of the food that is made in the hotel, and during one such deliveries, he encounters this guy named Theo, who lives in a very elite part of the society. They form a friendship first, which then develops into a beautiful romance. It is again a very cute story to read, and if you're looking for a very cozy romance, this is definitely one to go. Towards the end, it gets a bit dramatic, but it is perfect to be read by anyone who's 14 or 15 years in age again. It is also a very short book, so you can probably finish reading this book in one day again. So total cozy vibes, do give it a read. Next, we have another very popular book, which is Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aziman, in which we follow the love story between Oliver and Elio, of whom Oliver is this guy who's in college, if I'm not wrong, and he goes to Italy during one of his vacations in order to do a study with the professor there. And while he stays in the home of the professor, he develops a beautiful friendship with his son named Elio, which then again develops into a romance. It's quite a saddening story, and the movie of this one is also really well done. I personally think the movie is much better than this book. If I'm not wrong, I watched the movie first and then read this book, and it felt like the movie did much more justice to showing the story as it is. So if you want a sad LGBTQ story, which is also very honest, you can definitely try this one. And at last, inside this category, we have Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall, which is one of the most mature adult romances that I've read. Again, it is not spicy, and you can read this if you're 14 or 15 and above in age. It's basically an adult romance, but it does not have anything spicy at all. So anyone who's of that age range can definitely go forward and give this a try. It happens in England, and both of the characters whom we see here, they are very polar opposites of each other. And because of many things that happen, they come close together little by little. It does not happen all of a sudden at all. I can say that for nearly 60% of the book, both of the characters are very much separate, and only after that they come together, and that also due to a lot of forced circumstances. We get to learn so much about both of these characters individually as people rather than just the romance that is going on between them. We also see both of them understanding and learning about each other, which develops their romance into a very mature one also towards the end of the book. So if you're looking for a very mature, very well written queer romance story, you should definitely try Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. Now moving on to the series that I have for this book recommendation list. I have a total of 7 series, and I'll tell the name of the series and each and every book inside the series and pop up the covers here. So almost all of them I have listened to them as audiobooks only, and I have one alone as physical copy here, which I'll be showing to you guys. So the first of these series is the one which I very recently read in January again, and it is the Dash and Lily series by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. The 3 books inside the series are Dash and Lily's Book of Dash, 12 Days of Dash and Lily, and Mind the Gap, Dash and Lily. Here we follow our 2 main characters, Dash and Lily, who are both in the final year of high school, and they just have 1 year age difference. Lily ends up writing a dare inside a book and placing it inside the library, and Dash is a person who's very bookish in his nature, and he's kind of a nerd. He ends up picking up this book and follows the instructions for the dare there. The first book is basically both of them just communicating through the single book that is there, and towards the end of the book, they meet and fall in love with each other. The other 2 books inside the series is the progression of the relationship that is shown with them. This is a series that can be read during the Christmas time because all the 3 books happen during the holiday season in the West Abound. There is also a Netflix series adaptation for this one. I have not watched it yet, but I want to because it is a very short adaptation and I think I can watch it. Again, since it's YA, if you're 14 or 15 and above, definitely go forward and try the series. All the 3 books are very short, and the content is also super cozy and of very good quality. Next, we have an adult fantasy romance series. This is the only fantasy romance series or fantasy romance books inside this entire book recommendation list, and it is the Married to Magic series by Elise Koba. There are totally 5 books out right now, and I think the series is complete. I've read 3 of the 5. The 5 books are A Deal with the Elf King, A Dance with the Fey Prince, A Duel with the Vampire Lord, A Duet with the Siren King, and the last book, if I'm not wrong, is A Dawn with the Wolf King. The main plot of each and every one of these books is we have the female main character, who's basically a normal human being, and she falls in love with or gets married to this other mythical being who's a fantastical creature like a elf, fae, vampire, siren, werewolf, something like that. I've read the first 3 books, and of the first 3, the first and third ones are really, really good. That is A Deal with the Drifting, as well as the third one, which is A Duel with the Vampire Lord, are both extremely good. The second one, A Dance with the Fae Prince, was not that great if you ask me, but as a whole, that's the basic premise of the series. And in each and every book, a female main character who's a normal person gets married to this magical being, and from there the story just continues. They are all adult romances, but they are not that spicy if you ask me. So if you are like 16 or 17 and above, you can definitely go forward and try this series. Next, we have another super popular series which I started listening to in January only. I've just finished the first 2 books inside the series, and I'm currently listening to the third book. It also has a super hit Netflix adaptation, which is The Bridgertons by Julia Quinn. The basic plot of the series is this family called the Bridgertons, and they have 7 to 8 siblings if I'm not wrong, and each and every book inside the series is dedicated to the romance of each and every one of the 7 siblings. And at last, the 8th book alone has a backstory of their mother. In the first book, we follow our main character Daphne, who's the 4th child, because each and every sibling inside this family is named in the alphabetical order. So Daphne starts with E, so she's the 4th child. The second book is about Anthony, who's the 1st child. They are all adult romances, and they are quite spicy here and there if you ask me, especially towards the end of each and every book. But I'm totally enjoying the series because it is very entertaining, super comical, and extremely dramatic. It happens during the Victorian era, if I'm not wrong, very much back in time, like in the 1800s or so. And it happens in England exactly. The first 2 books which I finished reading are The Duke and I and The Viscount Who Loved Me. I enjoyed the experience of listening to both of them, and I'm definitely going to continue on with the series. So if you're interested in such an entertaining, funny, and kind of spicy romance series, this is definitely one you can pick. I think the subgenre inside romance for this one is Regency romance. Next, we have a graphic novel series which is also LGBTQ, but trust me, this is the coziest of everything that I've read so far in my life, and it is the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman, in which we follow our 2 main characters, Nick and Charlie, who meet each other, become friends, and then fall in love. But the romance is not just the main plot of the series at all, okay? It addresses mental health issues in such a beautiful way that they have not been expressed or explored in before in any story at all. This is basically the plot of this book, okay? Boy meets boy, boys become friends, boys fall in love. That's the central plot of the story, but surrounding that, so many other beautiful things happen. Again, if you're 14 and above in age, you can definitely go forward and read Heartstopper. There are totally 5 volumes of the series published so far. There is 1 more yet to be released. And the best thing about the series is you need not spend money at all, okay? If you have an internet connection, just install the Webtoon app in your phone and you can read this entire series for free in the Webtoon app itself. I read the entire series on Webtoon only, okay? And then only, since I love the author's writing as well as the series so much, I went forward and purchased the physical books for myself. So Heartstopper is definitely something you can go forward and read right away because it is available for free on the internet legally. Next, we have kind of a bittersweet romance duology, and it is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Again, I listened to both of these books in 2022, and for me, the first book of these 2 is a much more favorite one because it addresses so many things in such a beautiful way. It is a love triangle story between these 3 characters named Lily, Ryle, and Atlas. Lily and Atlas have a love story from their teen age, and Lily has currently fallen in love with and gotten married to this doctor named Ryle. We see the love stories of Lily with both of these men, and what all is happening in the present, and how is Lily dealing with it? What is she going to do? That's the plot of this book. The first one is really good. The second one is basically like, a book that was written because the first book is so good. You cannot read the second one also, but definitely go forward and read the first book. It is really good. The first book is It Ends With Us, and the second book is It Starts With Us. And at last, inside this category, I have 2 series by one single author. And the 2 series are the Lara Jean trilogy and the Summer trilogy by Jenny Han. The Lara Jean trilogy has 3 books, which are To All the Boys I've Loved Before, P.S. I Still Love You, and Always and Forever Lara Jean. This is one of the most cozy and cute romance YA series that I've read so far. Again, if you're 14 and above, you can read both of these series. If I'm not wrong, all the 3 books inside the series also have movie adaptations in Netflix, which are also super popular. I have not watched the movies though, but I just like the series so much because aesthetically it is very pleasing. The author's writing is so gorgeous, and the way in which she develops her main character here from the first book towards the last is very beautiful. The romance also grows inside the book, which I'm sure anyone who reads it will fall in love with because of the sweetness that it has. And the Summer trilogy, the 3 books are The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Always Summer, and another book. I don't remember its title right now. But here we follow our main character, Isabel, who with her elder brother and mother go to this place called the Summers and spend some time with her mother's friend and her sons there. It's been happening ever since their childhood, and during the teenage, what happens is after Isabel goes and stays there with them during a particular summer vacation, she falls in love with one of the two brothers there. Their love story is shown here, and it is again very young, innocent, and beautifully shown. I can say that the Lara Jean trilogy is much better than this one, but you can read the Lara Jean trilogy during any season of the year, but the summer trilogy needs to be read during the summer in order to deliver the exact vibes that it has. Another great thing about all of these 6 books inside the 2 series is that you can finish each and every one of the books in 1 day's time span. That is, you can read 1 book per day in 6 days. So give the series a try if you are interested. Now at last we are at the bonus section. If you stayed until now inside the videos, thank you so much for watching, because the 3 books that I'm going to recommend to you guys now are not romance books, but they are non-fiction books which are very much related to love. All these 3 books have helped me understand the love that I have for other people as well as myself really well. So I'm going to recommend them to you guys right now. Of which the first one is The 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty. I think I read this in 2023. It's quite a big book and it'll take a little bit of time for you to read, but it is one of the most practical books that I've read towards love so far in my life. And the thing that the author does here is he gives a good blend between science and spirituality and explains the 8 rules that he has when it comes towards love. And I can say that since these 8 rules are very practical, they can be applicable to anyone, okay? They are not subjective that much if you ask me. They are very much objective. And the love that you develop while you keep these 8 rules in mind and follow them as a couple in a relationship can make that relationship so much beautiful. So if you're having some kind of relationship issues, definitely go forward and try this book. I'm sure that it can help you in some way. Next, we have a non-fiction by one of my favorite authors, and it is Why We Love the Way We Do by Preeti Shenoy. In this book, the author talks about why we fall in love and love people in certain ways and why we love certain people in certain ways, okay? There's both romantic as well as platonic love. We are able to identify when love is romantic and platonic very easily, but what is the reasoning behind the feelings that we express towards different people in different ways is beautifully shown by the author here. It's a very scientific book and the author gives us a lot of example scenarios of people falling in love, and it is cheekily done by the author also here if you ask me. It's a very short book. You can sit down and finish this in just a few hours. I don't think the paperback or physical copy of it is available right now, but you can listen to it for free if you have an audible.in subscription going. It is available in the Audible Plus catalog. So Why We Love the Way We Do is definitely a very practical romance book or very practical love book that I think a lot of us can benefit from reading. And the last and final book that I have here is the book which will help you cultivate the most important and strongest kind of love that each and every one of us needs in our life. And that love is self-love. This is a psychological book and it is How to Be the Love You Seek by Dr. Nicole LePera. In this book, the author talks about how to build a proper, loving, caring and kind relationship with yourself by understanding your past trauma, by understanding your mental wounds, by understanding the trauma bonds that you have with people and so many other such things. It is quite a heavy book, so you cannot read this very fast. You have to give yourself the time to read this slowly and take it all in so that you can properly process it and put it into practice. It will be a chore reading this book, but trust me, once you finish reading this, your life will definitely not be the same. I've changed the angle from which I view a lot of things after finishing this one last year. So if you are someone who's struggling to self-love, do go forward and try this. It will scientifically show you why it is very important and how to do it also. So yes guys, those are all the 50 plus romance books that I wanted to recommend to you today. I hope this recommendation video was useful for you and you got some recommendations from it. Do let me know down in the comments whether you've read any of these books or if you're planning to read any of them in February or for Valentine's Day. If you have any other such recommendations also, please feel free to leave them in the comments so that I as well as other people who are going through the comments can get some recommendations from you guys. Also, if you have any particular romance book which is very favorite and close to your heart, tell that also to me in the comments. I'll try to pick it up sometime. And if you did enjoy watching today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.